Welcome back to the Gold IRA Blueprint podcast. If you're an American retiree and you've inherited a gold Roth IRA, you're probably wondering what on earth to do with it.
That's a pretty common question, yeah.
This deep dive,
Yeah.
well, we're going to get into the details, especially about how to actually sell it if you decide to.
Right.
But first, a quick reminder.
Okay.
If you're struggling to find the right gold IRA company, we've got you covered. Head over to goldirablueprint.com/exclusive for a free checklist. It's full of tips specifically for American retirees like you.
Yeah, that's a great resource to get started.
Inheriting a gold Roth IRA. I mean, it sounds amazing, right? Like striking gold, almost.
Yeah, you'd think.
But there's more to it than meets the eye.
Definitely. You have to make some important decisions. It's not just about the gold itself. You need to understand the IRS rules that come with it.
So it's not like finding a treasure chest you could just open up and spend.
Not quite.
What are some of the guidelines people need to be aware of?
Well, one of the big things is that as a beneficiary of one of these accounts, you have to follow IRS regulations.
Oh, regulations.
Like, for instance, those required minimum distributions, RMDs.
RMDs, those always sound a little intimidating.
Yeah, they can be kind of confusing.
What do people really need to know about them?
Well, RMDs are basically the minimum amount you're required to withdraw from the inherited IRA every single year.
Every year. So you can't just, hold on to the gold indefinitely.
Nope. The IRS wants to ensure that those inherited assets are distributed eventually, and RMDs make that happen. They're calculated based on your life expectancy, by the way.
Okay.
And if you don't take those RMDs,
Yeah, what happens then?
there can be some pretty hefty penalties.
Yikes. So even though it's an inheritance, there's a specific structure to how you access those funds.
Exactly. You have a timeline to work with.
So let's say someone inherits a gold Roth IRA, right?
Yeah.
What are their options at that point? What different paths can they take?
Well, they've got two main choices, basically. Liquidation or setting up a beneficiary distribution account.
Okay, let's break those down a bit. What exactly does liquidation involve?
So liquidation basically means selling the gold that's in the inherited IRA and then, taking a cash distribution.
Sounds pretty straightforward.
It can be, yeah. But you do have to be careful about potential tax implications.
Taxes. Always got to think about those.
Right. Even though Roth IRA distributions are usually tax-free, there can be other factors like estate taxes. Those are definitely something you want to think about carefully.
Yeah, state taxes can be a whole other can of worms. Okay, so we've talked about liquidation. What about that other option, the beneficiary distribution account? How does that work?
Well, with the beneficiary distribution account, you're basically transferring that inherited gold Roth IRA into your own name.
So instead of cashing out right away, you're basically keeping that gold within an IRA structure.
Exactly. And that way, your investments can keep growing tax-deferred, just like a traditional Roth IRA. Plus, you get the benefits of a self-directed IRA, which gives you more control over your investment choices.
Sounds like there are pros and cons to both options. It's all about figuring out what aligns with your own financial goals.
Couldn't agree more. And honestly, that's where getting advice from a qualified financial advisor is invaluable. They can help you navigate these decisions and make sure you're making smart, tax-efficient choices.
Having that expert guidance is so important, especially with something as significant as an inheritance. Okay, so let's say someone decides to sell their inherited gold Roth IRA. What are the actual steps involved in that process?
Selling an inherited gold Roth IRA. Well, it's a multi-step process for sure. You got to be really careful and methodical about it.
I bet we're talking financial and legal considerations here, so I'm guessing professional guidance is a must.
Absolutely. It's not something you want to try to DIY.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty. What's the very first step someone should take?
First things first, you need to figure out the value of the gold in that inherited IRA. It's the foundation for making good decisions down the line.
Makes sense. But I imagine it's a bit more involved than just checking the gold price online, right?
You got it. You're not just doing a quick Google search here. It's about figuring out the fair market value of those specific gold assets in the IRA.
So what does that involve?
Well, you need to think about the gold's purity, what form it's in, is it coins, bars, or something else? You might even need to consult with a qualified appraiser.
So we're talking about a really in-depth process to ensure accuracy.
Accuracy is key, especially when you're dealing with valuable assets like gold, and especially in the context of an IRA. There are tax implications.
Oh, taxes again.
And potential penalties for misreporting, so you got to be careful.
Okay, so we have a good understanding of the gold's value. What's next? Where do we go from there?
This is where getting advice from a financial advisor becomes crucial. Really, you shouldn't skip this step.
Why is that so important? What does a financial advisor bring to the table at this stage?
They can help you understand all your options, figure out if your decisions actually align with your investment goals. And they can help you navigate those tricky tax implications we talked about earlier.
So they're like a guide through this whole process, helping you avoid any potential pitfalls.
Exactly. They can help you avoid those costly mistakes and make sure everything's done by the book, according to the regulations.
Makes a lot of sense. So we've determined the gold's value, talked to a financial advisor. What's the next concrete step in actually selling the gold?
All right, so now it's time to contact the custodian of that inherited gold Roth IRA.
The custodian? Just a quick reminder for our listeners, who are we talking about here?
Right, so the custodian is the financial institution that manages the IRA. They're the ones making sure everything's compliant with all those IRS rules and regulations. Basically, they're your point of contact for anything related to the IRA itself.
Got it. So we reach out to them and let them know we want to sell the gold.
Yep. Contacting them is how you kick off the selling process. They'll walk you through all the necessary steps and paperwork.
Sounds like they're the gatekeepers, making sure everything is done by the book.
You could say that. They're the ones who ultimately facilitate the sale and ensure everything's legit according to those IRS regulations.
Okay, so we've contacted the custodian. What's the next big hurdle?
Now we get to the actual selling part. You need to choose a buyer for those gold assets.
So we're talking about finding a reputable gold dealer who will buy the gold from the IRA.
Exactly. And this is a step that requires careful thought. You want to make sure you're working with a dealer who's reputable, offers a fair market value for your gold, and has a good track record, smooth and transparent transactions.
What are some things people should look for when evaluating gold dealers? How can they make sure they're choosing the right one?
Absolutely. First off, get buyback quotes from multiple dealers. Don't just settle for the first offer, shop around. This will give you a sense of the current market value for your gold, and it helps you compare those offers.
It's like shopping for anything else valuable. You want to make sure you're getting a fair deal.
Exactly. Don't leave money on the table.
Yeah.
You also want to pay attention to the dealer's reputation, read customer reviews. It'll give you some insights into how reliable and trustworthy they are.
A good reputation can go a long way, especially when you're dealing with something as valuable as gold. Right, so we've found a buyer and we're working with the custodian. What's left to do? What's the final step in this whole process?
The final step is completing the transaction. Finalize the sale, transfer the gold assets, and get paid.
Sounds like this is where all the paperwork and legal stuff comes together.
Yep, it all becomes official.
Crucial to work closely with the custodian throughout this whole thing, right?
Absolutely. Make sure everything's handled according to those IRS regulations.
Compliance is key. Nobody wants to mess with the IRS. So we've covered the basic steps of selling an inherited gold Roth IRA. But before we move on, let's remind our listeners about that valuable resource we mentioned earlier.
Oh, right, yeah.
For those who need a little help finding the right gold IRA company, head over to goldirablueprint.com/exclusive and grab our free checklist.
It's designed specifically for American retirees. It's a great resource, really packed with helpful tips and insights. Don't miss out. So we've walked through those steps of selling, right? But let's talk about how to actually maximize your return when you decide to sell.
Okay, yeah.
One of the biggest things is understanding the precious metals market.
So going beyond just checking that daily gold price.
Exactly. You need to really grasp those current market conditions.
What does that look like?
Well, it means looking at price trends, obviously, but also examining those economic indicators, geopolitical events, anything that could really impact gold's value.
So we've got to think like investors here, not just someone who's trying to get rid of an asset.
That's a great way to put it. Understanding that bigger picture can help you make smarter decisions about when to sell. Timing is everything in the markets, You want to sell when the market's in your favor, not just when you need the money.
Speaking of timing, what are some market trends that might signal a good time to sell? What should our listeners be watching for?
Gold prices, they can be volatile. So keeping an eye on those market dynamics is key. Economic events, geopolitical tensions, shifts in investor sentiment, all of that can impact gold's price.
I can imagine.
For example, back during the 2008 financial crisis, when the stock market was tanking, gold actually went up like 25%.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it's a good example of how gold can act as a hedge.
So it's not just about riding the wave when things are good. It's
Yeah.
about understanding what actually drives the market.
Exactly. Staying informed, being adaptable to those changes, that's how you can really impact your return.
Are there any other, crucial tips for maximizing returns when selling inherited gold besides those market dynamics?
Oh, absolutely. You have to think carefully about your time frame.
Go.
When you're selling an inherited gold Roth IRA, you've got to consider your own financial needs and try to align the sale with good economic conditions.
So strategic planning, not just rushing into a sale just because you inherit it.
You got it. You might want to hold on to that gold a little longer if the conditions aren't ideal. Like, for example, if there's a lot of economic uncertainty, gold prices tend to rise because people are looking for safe haven assets.
Makes sense.
Waiting for a period like that could really maximize your return. And remember, talking to a liquidation specialist, they can be really helpful for figuring out the best time to sell.
Sounds like patience and expert guidance are key here.
Couldn't agree more. Rushing into things can really cost you.
Yeah.
There are also a lot of misconceptions out there about gold Roth IRAs in general.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
We should probably clear some of those up.
Yeah, definitely. What are some of the common myths you've come across?
Well, one I hear all the time is that gold Roth IRAs are only for wealthy people.
Oh, I've heard that one too. Is there any truth to that?
Not at all. They're accessible to anyone who can contribute to a regular Roth IRA. Those contribution limits, they're the same. You don't have to be a millionaire to invest in gold within your IRA.
So it's a level playing field, essentially.
Exactly. It's designed to be a retirement savings vehicle for everyone, regardless of income.
What other myths have you encountered?
Another one is that gold Roth IRAs are too risky.
Ah, yeah, the risk factor.
Yeah.
Always a concern with investments.
Of course. But you got to remember, all investments carry some level of risk. And while gold prices can fluctuate, historically, gold's been a safe haven asset.
Interesting.
It tends to hold its value, sometimes even increase, during those times of economic uncertainty. Think about how it performed in 2008, for instance.
So it's more about diversifying your portfolio, not just thinking of gold as this inherently risky thing.
Exactly. Gold can be a really valuable part of a well-diversified retirement portfolio. It's not about putting all your eggs in one basket. Spread that risk around.
Good point. Any other myths we should debunk while we're at it?
Let's see. Oh, another one I hear pretty often is that gold Roth IRAs are too complicated to manage.
I can see where that comes from. Dealing with physical gold seems intimidating.
It's true that there are some logistical things to consider, like storage and insurance. But with a gold IRA, you're not actually handling the gold yourself. The custodian takes care of that secure storage, which, has its own pros and cons depending on your needs and comfort level.
So the custodian handles all those behind-the-scenes details.
Exactly. They're the experts at managing gold Roth IRAs, so you don't have to become one yourself.
That definitely simplifies things. And remember, folks, we have a free checklist to help you choose the right gold IRA company for your needs. Just visit goldirablueprint.com/exclusive to download it.
Choosing the right custodian is super important for a smooth experience with your gold Roth IRA. They'll guide you, answer your questions, make sure your assets are safe and sound.
Now, let's circle back to something we talked about earlier, those emotional considerations.
Hmm.
Inheriting gold, especially from someone you love, it's not just a financial transaction, right?
Absolutely. It can be really emotionally charged.
How so?
Well, there's often a sentimental value attached to inherited assets, especially something tangible like gold.
Yeah, I can see that.
People might see it as a link to their loved one, a piece of their history. It can be tough to let go.
It's not always just about the money then. There are feelings and memories tied up in it.
Exactly. Some people feel a strong connection to that gold. It's a tangible reminder of the person they inherited it from. So yeah, it can make that decision to sell even harder.
So it's not a simple black and white decision.
Not at all. You have to acknowledge and respect those feelings.
So no right or wrong answer, just a personal choice.
Exactly. It's all about what's right for you, based on your circumstances, your emotions, everything. And again, a financial advisor can be really helpful here too.
Yeah.
They can help you sort through those emotional considerations and make a decision that aligns with your goals and values.
So they're not just giving financial advice, they're also providing that compassionate perspective.
Right. Sometimes just talking through those feelings and understanding your options can make a huge difference.
It's about that balance, isn't it?
Yeah,
Honoring the sentimental value, but also making smart decisions for your future.
you said it. And there are ways to do both. Maybe use some of the proceeds from the sale to create a different kind of tangible reminder,
Oh, that's a nice idea. What are some examples of how people might do that?
Well, some people buy a piece of jewelry or artwork, something that symbolizes their loved one, something they can treasure and pass down. Others might donate to a charity that was important to their loved one. It's a way to keep their legacy alive.
Those are all really meaningful ways to honor their memory while still making the most of that inheritance. It's not about forgetting, it's about moving forward in a way that feels right.
It really is all about balance, honoring the past and, making sure your future is secure. Speaking of the future, we should probably talk about estate planning. It's super important when you're dealing with inherited IRAs.
Yeah, that's something a lot of people don't like to think about.
Yeah.
But it's crucial, especially when we're talking about passing on assets like a gold Roth IRA.
You're absolutely right. People put it off, but if you address estate planning early on, it can save your loved ones a lot of trouble down the line.
So how does estate planning relate to gold Roth IRAs specifically? What should our listeners be thinking about?
One of the most important things is to make sure your own Gold Roth IRA has a designated beneficiary. It might seem obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people forget this step.
So we're talking about specifying who inherits the account if you pass away.
Exactly. Making it crystal clear in your estate plan, it can really make the whole inheritance process easier for your loved ones, potentially avoid any legal headaches or confusion.
It's not just about managing your finances while you're here. It's about making sure that transition goes smoothly after you're gone. Taking care of your loved ones even when you're not around.
That's a really nice way to put it. Estate planning is all about protecting the people you care about, making things as easy as possible for them during a tough time. And speaking of making things easier, let's remind everyone about that free checklist we mentioned. It can be really helpful for choosing a gold IRA company, especially if you're new to this whole thing.
Absolutely. That checklist is packed with tips and questions to ask potential custodians. Can save you a lot of hassle down the road.
For sure.
You can find it at goldirablueprint.com/exclusive. Don't miss out on that. So as we wrap up today's episode, what are some key takeaways our listeners should remember as they navigate this process? What should they really keep in mind?
Well, first and foremost, remember, you're not alone in this. There are resources out there to help you every step of the way. Financial advisors, gold appraisers, reputable gold dealers, even grief counselors. All these professionals can provide guidance and support tailored to you.
Like building your own financial dream team, a group of experts you can rely on.
Exactly. Surround yourself with people who know what they're doing, people you can trust. They can help you make smart decisions and navigate all the complexities of inheriting a gold Roth IRA.
Besides getting that expert guidance, what else should our listeners remember?
Don't skimp on research and education. Don't rush into any decisions without really understanding what they mean. Take the time to learn about the precious metals market, understand the current economic climate. Talk to those experts, get different perspectives.
Do your due diligence.
Exactly. Knowledge is power when it comes to your finances. The more you know, the better decisions you'll make. Decisions that align with your goals. And speaking of goals, there's no one right way to sell an inherited gold Roth IRA. What works for one person might not work for another.
So it's really about finding what's right for you, not just following some generic plan or doing what everyone else is doing.
Take some time to really think about your priorities, what you want to achieve with this inheritance. Don't be afraid to seek out that professional guidance to clarify your goals and come up with a plan that's just for you.
It's so easy to get bogged down in the details and lose sight of the bigger picture. A good financial advisor can help you stay on track.
Couldn't agree more. They can help you bounce ideas around, weigh different options, make sure your decisions are actually good for your financial well-being.
Before we sign off, I want to leave everyone with one final thought. We've covered a lot today. Selling, emotional considerations, estate planning. But at the end of the day, inheriting a gold Roth IRA is an opportunity. It's a chance to really improve your financial future.
I love that perspective. It's not just a burden, it's a potential stepping stone.
Exactly. So don't let those complexities overwhelm you. Take it step by step. Ask for help when you need it. Trust yourself to make good decisions. Decisions that are good for you and your future.
Well said. And hey, we're always here to help. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of inherited gold Roth IRAs.
Happy investing, everyone.